All right, Dave here, Sans Everything, and we're back in the garage talking about parts and stuff for my 1951 GMC pickup, which is right behind the camera. Okay, today, if you haven't figured out, we're going to be talking about my Astro Supreme wheel I've got behind me here. And what I'm going to talk about in this video, you can probably tell from the title, is what is a Unilug wheel. I've seen a lot of videos here on YouTube explaining what a Unilug wheel is, but there's a lot of people who hate them. And I don't think they're that bad. They are a little bit finicky, and we'll touch over some of those while we explain exactly what it is. You've all seen a wheel before. If you're watching this channel and haven't seen a wheel before, I can't really help you. But the difference between this wheel and another wheel that is a single lug pattern or a dual lug pattern is all the bolt holes here are oval, and they're not beveled for a lug nut. Don't worry, I'll explain the lug nuts in a little bit. And that is really what makes the Unilug. So Unilug means that this will fit a bunch of different bolt patterns. I have an S10 bolt pattern, which is 5 by 4.75, and there's also a big 5 for Chevys. There's a Ford bolt pattern, and this space here is what allows this wheel to fit a bunch of different bolt patterns without having to be specific to one bolt pattern. That helps bring costs down and makes this wheel a little bit more universal than if it was just one bolt pattern. Now this, I've called it an Astro Supreme 1,000 times, is actually a unique Supreme, but for all intents and purposes, an Astro Supreme Unilug wheel. So here on my bench, I've got a couple of different lug nuts. This is a factory lug nut off of my Mazda, and I believe this is an acorn seat at the bottom. You can get a slightly different seat at the bottom of all of your lug nuts, but really this is what would traditionally fit into a bevel on your wheel and keep your wheel on your hub and not rolling away. This is a fancy Project Kicks aftermarket tuner lug nut, and it's really the same thing, but it's got an aftermarket bevel on the bottom because the bevel between the aftermarket and the factory is different, and you can really see it if you look at it. This one's a little bit more aggressive where that one isn't, and so you can't run tuner lugs on a factory wheel or they'll wobble and fall off. This is a different style of tuner lug. This is a Gorilla lug, and it's just really a cheaper version of this one. Depending on what wheel you have, you might need to run this so that you can get a socket in it, or if you want to be fancy and ballin', you can run a neochrome like that. For the Unilug, we kind of throw that all aside, or maybe even combine a couple of the two. So you can see this Unilug has a bevel on it, and it's also got a bit of a shank. And what happens is this shank will go through this oval hole and allow this nut to move around so that you can use this nut depending on where your lug is. So this nut moves around, and depending on where your bolt pattern is, it dictates where this lug will sit in the rim. Now this, obviously, like that, tightening it in isn't going to be super safe or really a great way of holding your wheel. So that's where this washer comes in. All Unilug wheel nuts will come with this washer. It's got a bevel on one end, and then it's flat on the other. The flat side goes against the rim. The beveled goes in here, and it all keeps it together. Let me put this wheel down flat and really explain to you how this is working. Alright, so the Unilug concept is pretty simple, if not immediately apparent. You put the washer on the wheel, and then this will go through the washer like that, and it'll sit in the bevel of the washer. Now you can see how that's a nice seat there, and basically what this is doing is making your mounting surface for your wheel nut. Goes in there like that, and then depending on what your wheel design is, sometimes these washers will sit in a groove to prevent them from spinning. Other times, like on this one, it just sits here. And when I do try and tighten them, I try and keep these uniform. So either they're all going to be like that, or they're all going to be like this. In this case, I try and keep them with the oval of the pattern just because I feel like that's the best way to do it. And it is a little bit finicky when you're putting these on to make sure that the shank is going through here and not getting bound up. But that's how they work, and it ends up working out pretty well. Obviously, whoever put this together, it's the simplest solution to, kind of a complicated problem. These wheels would look terrible if there were dual bolt patterns drilled in them because there is no big center cap. So this is a good compromise. I am going to now put this onto the truck. I'll put the camera where you can see me and I can talk about what I'm doing while I'm doing it, and then we'll kind of wrap this little informative video up. Now I've got the wheel on, you can see how this Unilug works. the lug is in the oval hole right now, but there's a lot of space and play for things to move around. And obviously that isn't really what you want when you're going down the street. So you need the bolt and the washer to keep things in place. Let me snug up too, and then we can really talk about how this is centering the wheel on the lug nuts. Well, my nut and washer, I'll put it inside of the wheel hole, and I'll actually move the wheel around until I can feel the shank part go through. So that's a little bit snug right now. I'm going to put another one in down here just to tighten things up a little bit. Don't worry about all the squeaking. I'm going to widen this fender later, so it's all good. I've got two of these in, and I'm going to show you what's going on. You can see that things are a little bit more centered now. The lugs are definitely centered in the oval holes, but they're hitting on the edges. And so when you're putting on a Unilug wheel, and why a lot of people don't like it, is you got to be careful to make sure each lug you put in, you've got to center this yourself, because it's not going to center itself. It's not hub centric, it's not lug centric, so you got to be really careful when you're putting it on to make sure that you center everything nicely. So I'm going to put the rest of the bolts in, and then we'll see where the last lug lines up, and you'll really be able to see how this system works. Alright, I've gone through and tightened a couple of these lugs now, and you can see that now this lug is more centered within this hole. And that's exactly what happens when you go around and make sure that everything is tight. And that is why people don't like these, because you got to try and keep these washers straight, got to make sure everything is lined up in there. It takes longer than putting on a normal wheel for sure, and if you lose those washers, you're cooked. But for the sake of Universal and making it all work out, it does work out pretty well, all things considered. So let me get this last one on with the washer. We'll tighten everything down, lay the truck out, take a look at it, enjoy the fact that the Unilug wheels exist, and then we'll call this small little video a wrap. Alright, truck's back on the ground now. Unilug is in place. All of these are nice and tight. The only thing that I would have left to do is hit them with a torque wrench if I was actually going to be driving the truck today. I'm not. They're tight enough for the transportation that I got to do. The wheels look great under the fender, as they always do, and that is a quick explanation of Unilug wheels. Hopefully that helped some of you out. If you have any questions about how these work, where I got these lug nuts, anything like that, who makes them today, because Unilug is a bit of an old technology, do let me know and I'll definitely help you out. In this video, I'm going to end this video with a couple of different videos of my truck just sitting outside on the Astro Supreme wheels, because I really do love them. And hopefully this helps explain to you what a Unilug wheel is, why it's used, why it's still used today, why it was used way back when, and how to make Unilug wheels work on your project if you do come across them in the wild. So thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.